You know, they're selling you all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
Eles deu nothing. Eles deu nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, eles deu nothing. Eles deu fucking nothing. Not one of yous deu nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. You know, I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. It's normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie. I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I'm gonna beat you into the living death.
I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, you know, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Next year, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
Yes. What is up? MCR family, another daily edition of the show live on YouTube, obviously podcast form, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. I'm Matt, the hipster hunter. It's going to be a good show. It's going to be an interesting show because this PBC schedule, I think, has been very divisive in the boxing community, in the media. Cameron Gillen is on, so I'm definitely going to introduce him in a second. I can't wait to debate this topic. I don't know where Cameron sort of falls on this topic, but that's one I can't wait to sort of delve into, dissect, and then on top of that, look at in a more macro sense in the whole sport of boxing. 2019, are we heading towards a state of oversaturation, which will lead to, I think, a real inferior product maybe next year. Delve into that, obviously. Plus, it is preview day. Maurice Hooker versus Alex Saucedo, which, I'll be honest, I think it's probably going to be a really fun fight. It might be one of those sleeper fights on a Friday night. You might not really think about it. Plus, overall, it's kind of a slow weekend. Gerald Miller versus Danu, not a fight I'm looking forward to. Plus, now it's no longer having the vacant WBA regular title, which means nothing anyways. That sort of, lessens it. Claressa Shields in a arguable tune-up against Rankin. Those sort of fights we're going to delve into. Obviously, UFC Fight Night as well. Magny versus Santiago Ponzinibbio in Buenos Aires. Definitely tons of topics. UFC pay-per-view split increasing from 50% to 70%. Tons of information, tons of news out there. I'm joined, obviously, like I said earlier, by the great Cameron Gillen. Cameron, how you doing, man?
What's going on, man? Looking forward to it. I won't get a bit of feedback off myself. You hear me, yeah?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you fine.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting these topics, man. The PBC fights, that's something that's really interesting to me. I'm looking forward to discussing them. So, yeah, man, I just literally popped back because I actually went on a date tonight.
Ooh.
A very successful first date. A very successful first day. I got a second one on Sunday, so I'm buzzing, man. So I literally came back and yeah, you started the show as soon as I got back, so here we are.
Well, salute to you, man. I won't make you spill any details, but shout out to you. Obviously, I want to kind of get through the fights this weekend, at least the boxing fights, before we head into the PBC schedule, overall, landscape of boxing in 2019. Because to be honest, these fights aren't, other than maybe the Hooker Saucedo fight, none of these fights are really hard to call. There is the Showbox Next Generation card on Friday as well with Jaron Ennis in Philadelphia. I'm not really going to delve into that card because I just really haven't done enough tape study on it. I'll be honest. Go find other shows for that card potentially, but at least shout out to them. But let's start with the Saucedo Hooker fight for the WBO title, for Hooker's WBO title. Obviously, Top Rank winning the purse bid. It be on ESPN. what's your initial sort of takeaways for this matchup, Cameron?
Just do me a favor, man. Just give you a breakdown because I'm just gonna sort my mic out a minute. And I'll get back into
Don't
it.
worry about it. Don't worry about it, man. You just send me a little like notification in the chat or something in the Google Hangout when you're ready. Don't worry about it. Obviously, Maurice Hooker coming off the Terry Flanagan win, which I think a lot of people just didn't count him in. I didn't think that Hooker was really a relevant player in the division. I think he's had some questionable decisions go his way on his sort of climb up the ranks. I never really saw him as a legit elite world-class level guy, but he, in my opinion at least, kind of outclassed Flanagan. It might have been a very anticlimactic, sort of boring affair, at least compared to, let's say, the Prograis-Flanagan fight in terms of output, punishment dealt. However, Hooker was, in my opinion, never in any danger, controlled throughout the 12 rounds. That was highly impressive to me. And obviously, Alex Saucedo coming off the arguable round of the year, fight of the year against Lenny Zapovina. I believe that was in the summer sometime. This fight to me is really intriguing on a certain level because I think whoever wins this one is obviously a relevant player mixed in with the Jose Ramirez and whoever wins at the World Boxing Super Series tournament. In my opinion, it's going to be interesting to see if Hooker can really negate the offensive volume and punishment of Saucedo. Do we see Saucedo come in and be able to dictate the range, the pace of the fight? Those are, I think, really the determining factors on who wins this fight. Is really who controls the pace. Hooker, in my opinion, is a guy that if he's not in control, his sort of technique just falls apart in a way. With Saucedo, we've seen him go through the fire, so there's less question marks about Saucedo, even though he's the challenger in this matchup. This fight being in Oklahoma City, Saucedo's hometown, definitely going to have the hometown advantage, obviously. I'm picking Alex Saucedo to win by decision. I think Hooker, though, will probably be a very difficult opponent to deal with. I think he might make it an ugly affair at times, make it competitive at times. But I think Saucedo will be able to sort of dictate the fight at mid-range, work his combinations, work that right hand at will, and really start landing some punishing shots on Hooker. And if it starts devolving into a higher intensity, high output fight, that really swings towards Saucedo's side in favor, in my opinion. If the output stays lower and minimal, I think Hooker could maintain control and potentially sneak out a decision here. Cameron, are you ready yet, by chance?
Yeah, I should be fine now. Can you hear me fine? Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to this fight. I mean, I thought Saucedo looked good in his last fight. That fight was back in June, I believe, end of June. I like this. I think their styles would gel nicely. I wasn't too impressed with Hooker against Flanagan. I thought, I know that Hooker, for a lot of people, was pretty, we didn't really know too much about him for that Flanagan fight, but I thought against Flanagan, I know Flanagan's durable, but that's all really Flanagan is. I really felt like, I thought, Hooker won the fight. I'm not going to sit here and say it was a bad performance, but I felt like he could have done better. I thought he could have really put a stamp on that fight. So I think this fight's pretty evenly matched. I lean to Saucedo, man. That's what I think. That's who I think is going to pull this fight off. I think, although he's had a lot of fights, he's not really fought anybody of note, right? I'm just kind of thinking of his resume. Like, I can't remember anyone off the top of my head apart from the last fight. I think he's, I think on paper it's very evenly. I agree with what you're saying. I think the winner of this fight should fight Jose Ramirez. I think that should be an actual fight next. And like you said, I think the winner of this fight will be a player in the division. Hooker already is. He's got a belt. But can Saucedo, show that he has got the minerals to be a world champion? He's 28-0. But I think we're going to see more of him in this fight 100% because up until now, his resume isn't the greatest for someone who's got 28 fights. I mean, I don't want to sound too critical, but he's not fought anybody in the top sort of 10. So for me, I think this is a big difference. Even though Hooker's not got the most established resume at 140, it's still a big leap in class for me. So I'm interested in that sort of sense. But I think I don't think Hooker's will title defense this time, sadly.
Yeah, I largely agree with you, and especially when you just look at like the relative names of both guys, like Adalius Perez and Terry Flanagan sort of stick out for Maurice Hooker. Obviously, the Adalius Perez fight was a draw. Most thought he lost that. And speaking of Hooker, but he still fought those guys. Lenny Zappavina, no disrespect to Lenny Zappavina, but he's borderline top 15, and I think that's being maybe somewhat generous, to be quite honest. So while that win was highly impressive just due to the nature of the win, how exciting it was, you're right, there is still a huge jump up in competition level, in my opinion, and probably in yours for Saucedo, but he just looks the goods more as well. His overall package seems to flow a little more evenly or just consistently within the ring. Hooker, to me, always seems like a guy that has such physical tools, but he can't really put it all together to a coherent strategy, game plan, and overall fighting style. But, like you said, I think Hooker in the fight against Terry Flanagan, even though it was largely unimpressive, like I'll say it, like it was largely unimpressive in a way.
Yeah.
It was just maybe due to it being just a boring fight. Terry Flanagan, in my opinion, didn't really show up, but then again, he really didn't show up against Regis Prograis. So maybe
I was just about to say that. I think it's kind of become a cliche of when Flanagan's in fights, they're either boring or I think Flanagan is one of those. He fights with a very one pace flat sort of style. Like he doesn't look like he ever gets out of second gear. Like he's not got any explosiveness. And I think with Hooker and I think with Prograis, I think they kind of thought he's so one-dimensional, and I think they just didn't feel like they had to get out of second gear to win that fight. I think there's a pattern there.
Absolutely agree. But I sort of echo what you said to finish off with. Saucedo, he seems to be the goods. He seems, in my opinion, in the style matchup between him and Hooker, have to have a lot of the advantages here. Hooker has to, fight a perfect game and negate a lot of the offense from Saucedo to win a decision here. I just don't see that happening. Hooker's never been really that impressive to me. Moving on from that, let's sort of jump over to the DAZN card with Jerry Miller and Bogdan Danu, and obviously Gabriel Rosado versus Luis Aries, Brandon Rios versus Ramon Alvarez, and Clarissa Shields versus Hannah Rankin. Anthony Sims Jr. on the card, Nico Hernandez on the card as well, Nikita Abibi, all the sort of prospects that Eddie's been sort of touting out. This fight being in Mulvane, Kansas, sort of a lackluster move from Atlantic City. Cam, what's your overall take on this card? It seems to be obviously a huge sleeper card where no one's paying attention to it, and maybe rightly so. But a few years ago, guys like Gabriel Rosado, Brandon Rios, it would be just a different story. It's just the fact that it's 2018, this fight's in Kansas, and all these fights are relatively lopsided.
Yeah, do you know what? This whole card's a stinker for me. I mean, if you put Rios against Rosado, I think maybe I'd be a bit interested at 154 or something like that, because this would be a fun fight. Obviously, Rosado would win the fight, but I mean, how much have you seen of Bogdan Dinu? I mean, how much have you seen of him? I mean, this is to be the first time I've seen him fight. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. It'll be the first time I've seen him fight ever.
Yes, I haven't done any tape study on him. I'll be completely honest.
No, neither have I. So I can't really assess the fight, right? Like, I've looked at his resume and it's not impressive. Like, he's not got any sort of wins on his resume. I just feel like it's another sort of undefeated guy who's not beat anybody of note, and I think Miller will win the fight. That's what I think, or that's what it's being built up for. Because Miller's kind of the guy that they're targeting for Joshua and things like that at some point. So, I mean, Rosado against Ari, I think that's a good fight. I actually think that's a good fight.
And also, just on top of that, Luis Aries may have that sort of like Rob Brandt effect, where his last fight was so bad that we discount him and discredit him completely when he still, at that time, was a good prospect. And Gabriel Rosado is a fading veteran that's hittable. This is one of those matchups that is a little bit more even. As you said, I'm a little more looking forward to this one, but it's not going to get me hyped, to say the least.
No, and I think I'm not going to write Arias off just yet because he did lose to someone who's now a world champion, right? So who's been a top middleweight for a few years now. So I'm not going to rule him out completely. I mean, Rios against Alvarez. I mean, look, I love Rios, right? I've always loved his fighting style. I love the trilogy of Alvarado, but I mean, what's this guy got to offer now at this point? I think he's punch drunk already. To be fair, I've listened to a few of his interviews recently. He is punch drunk. He's taken a lot of wars, and I mean, would he even win this fight against Ramon Alvarez? At this point, Clarissa Shields against Hannah Rankin is a solid fight. I actually think that's a decent fight. I like Hannah Rankin.
Definitely will be exciting. Definitely will be an exciting fight. I just think Rankin doesn't really have any shot of winning it.
Yeah. I think she'll give it a go. 100% she'll give it a go. And then you've got Anthony Sims and people like Nico Hernandez on the undercard. And overall, it's pretty. I'd give it like a 5 out of 10. I'd say, like if I was rating it. I don't think it's that impressive. Like, I'm gonna watch it, but I'm not gonna stay up and watch it live. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna do that. But the Miller fight intrigues me to some extent because I have no idea who Dinu is. So I'm hoping that he turns up and just puts on a performance and just shows more of Miller's game. But it's kind of a stretch, I feel.
Remember the fighter that fought Dominic Brazil, Aguno, who trained with
Yeah.
Who trained with Joseph Parker. He was kind of that unknown that got a high-ranking position, all of a sudden got a fight, and it turned out to be a really good fighter. He lost that fight, but I think he's still a quality heavyweight in a way.
Good point.
Maybe Dinu is that guy. He's undefeated for a reason, especially at heavyweight. But I'm not gonna sit here and say this is some great fight. Quickly though, somebody in the chat saying Danir Lusanov is on this card. No, he is not. I believe he's on another Matchroom card. I forget which one, but he's not on this card. He got moved off of it. I just wanted to quickly address that.
Who's that? What fight is that?
Danir Lusanov, the guy that beat Josh Kelly in the Olympics.
I think he might have got moved to the Kelbrook card. I'm not too sure.
Yes, it's the Kelbrook card. Thank you. I was looking at all the cards today to sort of do some research for the oversaturation topic, and let's get to that since that's my transition to it. Because honestly, I have nothing really to say about these fights. I mean, Shields is going to win it. I really don't care who wins the Brandon Rios-Raymond Alvarez fight. I could care less. I might pick Luis Aries in the upset against Gabriel Rosado, but again, one of those fights that doesn't really draw my attention anyway, and Big Baby should win that fight against Danu.
Rosado's one of my favourite fighters. Like, I don't know why, but I've always liked Rosado. I like watching his interviews. Like, it's just something about that guy. Like he just fights anybody, right? Like he's that type of fighter that doesn't. Well, we're not afraid to fight anybody. He'll just jump in the ring and fight anybody. I've always liked Rosado. I just hope that he's getting paid well because he is on the way down, and I think he's one of those guys that would be pretty clever with his money, but he's another guy that you just hope doesn't take too many beatings, right?
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. And from what I've seen so far, like in interviews, like he still seems pretty coherent. Like I don't sense any sort of punch drunkenness yet, and hopefully that stays the same. And plus, I mean, he has sort of changed his fighting style in sort of the recent years to be a little more defensive minded, a little more boxing centric. That's probably going to extend his career a couple more years. And like you said, he's always been a good guy. Like I met him once or twice. Always very friendly. Always just a nice guy. So I agree, but it's just one of those matchups. Like it's a sleeper fight that probably will turn out to be a good fight, but for some reason, I'm just not hyped for this card at all. Maybe it's just the card overall that's sort of staining that fight itself. But sort of to move on to the state of boxing, the PBC schedule itself. I talked obviously a little bit about the schedule yesterday before the press conference because Keith Idek sort of broke a lot of the news beforehand. However, we found out a lot more information, a little more cards were announced. Cameron, I want to get your take because you haven't really been on the show to talk about it yet. What's your take about this PBC schedule? Buy or sell? Is it a good first quarter for the new venture between PBC and Fox?
I think it's solid. I mean, I'm going to give Keith Thurman a pass, right? I think everybody who knows boxing will give Keith Thurman a pass for his comeback fight, right? I mean, come on now. I mean, he's been up for years, and Lopez, and I think this will be Thurman's first knockout win for a while. I'll be very surprised if Thurman didn't knock Lopez out. Very surprised. What fights we got? I mean, Lamont Peterson against you. I think Lamont Peterson against Lipinets is actually a solid fight. I actually don't mind that fight. I mean, you've got Porter against who's Porter fighting?
Udanis Ugas.
Yeah, I don't mind that fight either. I think it's a solid schedule. I mean, I thought Spence and Garcia. I mean, that size difference, man. I mean, it's been tweeted about, and I'm sure we spoke about that fight before, but I thought the size difference was huge. But I think the schedule's I can't remember all the fights on the top of my head. I think Danny Garcia's fighting Granados, right?
Quick, if you want, I can quickly read off the schedule.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
December 22nd will be the opening of the Fox deal. Jamal Charlie versus William Monroe. Jamel Charlie versus Tony Harrison. Dominic Brazil versus Carlos Negron. January 13th, Jose Uzcategui versus Caleb Plant. That's on Fox Sports 1. January 26th, Keith Thurman versus Josecito Lopez on Fox. Adam Wanaki versus Gerald Washington on that card as well. February 16th, Leo Santa Cruz versus Miguel Flores with Omar Figueroa. Oh, I know. Hold on. Omar Figueroa versus John Moline Jr. on that card as well. Anthony Durrell versus Ivani Yirdom on FS1. Sean Porter versus Odanis Ugas on Fox March 9th, March 16th. Earl Spence versus Mike Garcia, Fox pay-per-view. Most likely going to be $75 just because that's the precedent that Wilder and Fury are setting for this new venture for PBC pay-per-views. Lamont Peterson versus Sergey Lepinets on FS1, March 24th. April 13th, Caleb Truex versus Peter Quillen, FS1. And April 20th, Danny Garcia versus Adrian Granados for Fox. That is the first quarter of PBC on Fox specifically. Does not include PBC on Showtime.
Santa Cruz, man.
Oh, that shit's so
Santa
bad.
Cruz.
That shit's so bad.
I tweeted, right, and about this, and it got quite a lot of retweets. I said that, why the hell is he not fighting Gary Russell Jr.? Why is he not fighting Russell Jr.? That fight, they got no mandatories, unification. They're both under the PBC banner. Why isn't that fight happening? They spoke about it, right? They spoke about it being potential on the Fury Wilder card. That fight's not happened. I don't know whether it's Russell's fault because he's just inactive and he doesn't really care about boxing, but Santa Cruz against Flores, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm disappointed. Everybody's disappointed. I mean, this fight for me is just terrible. I mean,
and I'll be honest, I know people were sort of like, saluting the Omar Figueroa John Molina Jr. fight as this fun fight, but I'm not too hyped on that one either. Like, that Fox card to me isn't that great. Like, it might turn out to be entertaining, but there's no significance to it in any way. Like, it just doesn't matter, and it's on Fox. I feel like that's a huge waste of funds right there for that card specifically. And quickly, I just wanted to echo what you said. This is solid. Like, the schedule is solid. I know I was pretty critical of it yesterday, but the FS1 lineup, I think, overall is pretty great. Like, it was Got2Give versus Caleb Plant. I'm pretty hyped on that, to be honest. Peterson versus Lepinets, I love that fight. Even the Caleb Truex versus Peter Quillen, I like a little bit.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
Good to see Quillen back for quite, in a decent fight for once.
Honestly, but nothing is wow. I think that nothing is amazing. There's no A versus A level boxer on this list. It just doesn't exist.
I did like the little Furman and Spence sort of, they took little digs at each other. I like that. I think that fight's going to happen next year. I think Furman and Spence will fight at the end of next year. I really do believe that. I really do. I think Furman will fight. Then again, Pending doesn't get in. I mean, knowing Furman, he'll probably fight Lopez, break his shoulder, and he'll be out for another 2 years. But I think as long as Furman stays healthy, I think that fight will happen at the end of next year.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that as well. Obviously, Danny winning in April, he could probably take on maybe a Earl Spence in the fall. I could see them just fighting twice a year, and then maybe the first quarter of 2020, honestly fighting Thurman versus Spence, or whoever wins a Danny versus Earl, Sean versus Thurman rematch, or however you sort of combine those four.
Can we also can Keith Thurman? How long can Keith Thurman make 147 now? He's been out for 2 years. He was a big welterweight before. Like, how long can he make 147 pounds now before he moves up? Potentially moves up. You know what I mean? I think that's a question that needs to be answered.
I'm not too worried about that because he's not a guy that has so much muscle mass. Like, we're just harder to cut, right? He's a guy that just gains some fat. Like, he's a guy that gets a little chubby. And while that's not the greatest thing to have in terms of fighter lifestyle in between fights, that's much easier to cut back to 147. Plus his work ethic from just, I've been in camp. I was in camp with him when he fought Danny Garcia. It's just another level. Like, it's a true A+ level work ethic. I'm not too worried about that. And plus, I definitely don't feel like he moves up to 154 while there's Spence and these rematches with Danny and Sean there. He's going to take them. Those are millions of dollars per fight. And now with Earl versus Mikey on pay-per-view, I mean, really, Pandora's box is open on those fights really not being on Fox. That a Keith Thurman, Earl Spence pay-per-view or a Keith Thurman versus Danny Garcia pay-per-view is down the line. I don't know, but that's just a possibility. I
think Spence Garcia is going to flop on pay-per-view. Like, I'd be surprised if it beats Raw Kovalev.
Yes.
I really think I'll be surprised if it does 150,000. I'll be like, that's a success. Like, I don't want to be too disrespectful, but this fight's not going to do good numbers. It just isn't.
No, it's not. It's two guys that are not stars fighting each other on pay-per-view behind a massive paywall. Now, maybe I've heard this theory that, since it's a Fox pay-per-view, and for reference, when the UFC had their Fox deal, which they are ending at the end of this year, none of their pay-per-views were distributed by Fox. So Fox really had no monetary incentive to promote their pay-per-views. Potentially that could be different with this. However, I just don't think that's valid for this specific fight. I don't think Fox putting all the marketing they can and all the promo they can in this pay-per-view is going to make it go from, like you said, 150,000 pay-per-view buys to 500,000 to 1 million. That just seems so unlikely. Spence, just to be honest, is nowhere near the level of star that a Deontay Wilder is. And even the Deontay Wilder-Tyson Fury fight is a gamble on pay-per-view in some way, obviously. This is just insane. Obviously, it's due to the economics of just boxing right now, where these A-listers are demanding such a high guarantee for these big fights that the promoters and networks are so worried about dipping into their TV rights money, their TV rights budget, in eating that up for these big fights that it's going to be a return to pay-per-view. And I think let's transition to it in a macro sense for boxing, because I ran the numbers very fast. What is scheduled on the docket right now from today towards the schedule that PBC and Fox has put out is 25 events. That's it. That's all that is just scheduled thus far. In 2019, Golden Boy and DAZN will have 10 events. Matchroom and DAZN will have 32 events. PBC on Fox will have 22 events. We have no idea what PBC and Showtime's numbers and commitments are, but let's just assume maybe it's one event per month, so 12 events. Top Rank will have 54 events. That's at least 120 events next year, not including main events, K2, and honestly, PBC on Showtime. The expansion of just the overall product in the sport, the overall amount of content in the sport is really so vast. I was speaking to Mookie Alexander from Bloody Elbow earlier about the parallels we can look from the UFC to Fox and that overall oversaturation issue that they are now still dealing with. Boxing is at a major crossroads from a business perspective, from a market standpoint, about what is happening in the next 2 to 3 years.
I think I saw you write a tweet similar to that, right? About boxing being in that era now of sort of TV streaming or something like that.
Yeah, and it's this weird era where we are simultaneously expanding our TV rights deals per promoter. Look at what Eddie Hearn's getting from DAZN. Look at what ESPN's getting from Top Rank's getting from ESPN, PBC from Showtime and Fox. And at the same time, a massive return to the pay-per-view market. To me, that obviously spells of massive inflation in the marketplace for boxing. Inflation of purses, inflation of production cost, inflation of budgets, inflation of everything right now in the economic standpoint of boxing. I don't know how to fix that, because right now we will continue to see these cards. And maybe they are just solid. And maybe, we decide what events we pay for and in terms of the big ones, do we shell out money for Pacquiao versus Broner or Spence Garcia? Obviously, the consumer and the marketplace will decide in the U.S. And in the UK, and I know Cameron can probably speak to this in his way, is having its own effect on this, or its own sort of system of it, with BT and Frank Warren ramping up pay-per-views, Sky Sports Box Office ramping up pay-per-views, and just the overall flooding of the market in terms of content. Because of that, and really combined with the lack or the scarcity of roster size and stable, because let's be honest, PBC has the largest stable of about 130 boxers. That is far less than what the UFC standard was of 500 plus when they went to 50 events a year plus 12 pay-per-views. Now, I don't think we see nearly that expansion, obviously, for PBC. We obviously don't see that, but we are seeing an expansion for them. Can their roster and stable hold it? I don't know. And again, this is not a debate or topic that I have any answers to, but something that we should look at. That the marketplace of boxing has seen massive inflation, massive oversaturation, and that will have drastic negative effects on you, the consumer. Cameron, any thoughts on this?
I agree with pretty much everything you said. There's actually a good question in the chat that's just popped up by I'm a Kid. It says, why hasn't DAZN put forward quality fights and world-class fights? I see DAZN is only temporary in the States. Be interesting.
I would answer that with the issue of these promoters do not have the infrastructure, the stable, the overall ability to fulfill the requirements of their deals. Look at Top Rank stable and having 54 events a year. Is that sustainable? I don't think so. I don't even think PBC's stable could sustain 54 events per year. But guess what? They might have to, depending what Showtime's requirements are. So to answer, I'm a Kid, is DAZN will have a massive issue doing that with the amount of cards they are trying to produce, with the amount of fighters they have. You know, the supply and demand is completely tilted in the wrong direction in the marketplace of boxing right now, is how I would answer it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll say this again, like, especially with DAZN, like, people forget to think this is just started, right? Like, I get why people want to see the best fights and stuff, but you know, DAZN is literally a new thing. Like, it's just a new era. Like, DAZN has started a new era. So, I mean, we can't expect it to shoot off into the stars at first hurdle, right? Like, it's going to be a work in progress. This DAZN. So, I'll give him a few passes for a few bad cards. I thought the Jacob Diachenko one was solid. I think DAZN have done pretty well so far, especially with their signings and stuff. But I think they'll do. I think they'll just continue to build, and I think they'll be quite successful.
I agree. In maybe a very long-term sense. But I think the current model cannot hold what the industry just has, the supplies it can give it. You know, eventually they're going to run out of names to headline these cards. I know we are not used to that in boxing because it's not that long ago where it was just HBO and Showtime in the U.S. and maybe Box Nation and Sky in the UK, and there was 20 events a year, maybe a couple pay-per-views. Now we have 100+ events a year at the very minimum end in terms of estimates, plus pay-per-view. That is a drastic difference in what the consumer can basically support. And on top of that, what the sort of resources can support in the industry, meaning fighters. Fighters are the resources for these promoters and these networks. And I don't think the resources can really sustain what the corporations are sort of demanding of it. I think in probably a year or two, they should definitely recognize that, because they're not going to recognize it next year. Like, the die is cast in a way. We're going to have that many events next year, and watch by September when we run out of main eventers, because guys like Gary Russell Jr. just don't fight 3 times a year. And PBC has commitments to Fox and Showtime. And that will become a issue. It will become a massive issue for the consumer when we start getting fights that just should not be headliners. And Joe Dinu is a perfect example of that, in a way. And I think we're going to see more and more of that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I think, I don't know, I'm being pretty patient with DAZN. I've not trashed it on social media or anything like that. Like, I'm just going to be patient with it, because I feel like eventually it will shoot off.
It's not a DAZN issue. It's not a Fox issue. It's not a ESPN issue necessarily. It's not an individual network issue or app issue or even a promoter issue. Like, it's not an individual promoter issue. It's that the sporting market for TV companies and TV networks has risen so high, the demand for it, that Fox is going to ask for all these events per year. DAZN is going to ask for all these events per year, because sporting rights combined with ad revenue is the highest you can get if you're a TV network. because people watch it live. You know, other like sitcoms, you know, sort of other sort of TV shows, the DVR era sort of ruined that for ad revenue in terms of what networks can get. But for sports, that never has really wavered. So that's why DAZN's going to offer up huge sums of money and try to get, you know, 32 matchroom events a year, not including World Boxing Super Series, not including what K2 may bring, or obviously the Golden Boy 10 events per year. You know, this is just a massive influx of what corporations are asking of the sport. And realistically, I do not think the sport can handle what the corporations are asking. And on top of that, I don't think the consumer can handle what the corporations are asking of us.
Yeah. I'll pretty much echo everything you said because, yeah, I just have to agree with everything you said. I've just been reading the chat, actually. There's a lot of good comments in the chat tonight.
Mm-hmm.
People hating on design, but PBC are putting nothing but mismatches. That's also true. But I think the PBC, I think, like I said, I think their schedule's pretty solid. I'm not going to sit and say. At first, when I saw things like Santa Cruz, because Santa Cruz Flores was the first one I saw that got announced, I thought, right, this is the shambolic. Then I saw Lipinets and Lemon Peterson, which I think is a really good fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think the PBC schedule is actually solid. I'm actually looking forward to quite a handful of those fights.
And also, I think, you know, I've talked about this before, I think fans get stuck into debates that are just pointless. Like, there is no real material gain in talking about, is PBC have the better schedule? Does DAZN have the better schedule? Like, that is so far and away not what we should be talking about and debating. Because I think we can look at it from a whole. All of these networks and promoters run their sort of companies the exact same. The model is not different at all. Whether it's an app, whether it's on Fox, whether it's on Showtime, how the cards are put together, the type of main events we're getting, the frequency of A-listers versus A-listers is relatively the same across the board. So I think that debate is it's a rabbit hole of nothingness in a way.
I agree. I think we spoke about this topic quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, and it's just something I really want to get to because I think no one's talking about it in a substantial way. You know, I don't know how other podcasters are, you know, dealing with the schedule and just talking about, you know, like the topic I just talked about. You know, is PBC schedule better than Matchrooms? I don't care about that debate. Go to other shows for that. That to me does not materially affect you guys listening right now. Whoever's listening, you the consumer, you the fan of the sport. If PBC has a better schedule or Matchroom or Top Rank, it doesn't fucking matter because they all relatively have the same level of schedule. Let's be honest. Promoters are going to all be the same regardless of who they're attached to.
That's one thing I've never done. Is sat there for who's putting on the better fights. Like that just doesn't bother me. Like I just watch the fights they come. I don't sit there and think, well, Top Rank's doing better than Showtime or Heyman's doing better than her. You know what I mean? That's just something that I just never even pay attention to, actually. Like, not once in my life.
And I would say a vast majority of boxing YouTube comments are about that. It's about, you know, who's winning. Is it Eddie? Is it Bob? Is it Al Heyman? Like, who gives a fuck? Are you winning? Are you the consumer winning in this exchange?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those comments, man. On usually certain channels. I'm not going to name any, but it's certain channels. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah.
Yes, I agree. We're going to take a caller right now. I know Gary really wanted to talk about the PBC schedule and probably give his predictions on the fight. Quickly, just to add to the boxing news before we head into MMA and the caller, Richard Comey fighting, who is he fighting again? I forgot the name. Iza Shanaev of Russia. That fight would be for the vacant IBF title as they have stripped, obviously, Mike Garcia of the title when he moved up and is fighting Earl Spence. On top of that, that fight will be on ESPN. You know, sort of stitching back to PBC and, you know, their need of people to headline events. Richard Comey is a person that could have headlined a Fox Sports 1 event, and now he's on ESPN. Just saying. And Dan Rayfield is alluding to in his sort of article that a Lomachenko versus Comey fight could materialize next year. I love that fight. Cannot wait for that potentially. Cam, what's your...
Yo, Matt.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, can you hear me, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, whilst you're taking a caller, I'm going to go get a quick drink. So if I'm not here when you pull me back, that's what I just want to let you know.
Don't worry about it, Cam. Don't worry about it. And on top of that, I already said that the WBA will not strip Manuel Char from his PD drug test failure. Emilio Deneau unlikely to be for a title fight per Keith Idek. Sad day for them. Going out to Gary in Dallas, one of our MVPs, I feel like, always calling in, and proud Patreon member. Hold on, air horns for Gary. Gary, how you doing?
What's going on, Matt?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. I'm doing good. I'll give you my prediction first. I think Hooker takes an easy decision. I don't see the appeal in Saucedo. I think he's a one-dimensional come-forward fighter, and I think with Hooker's reach, he just keeps him away. I don't even think Saucedo's gonna. Yeah, I think it's gonna be the same thing round after round. I think Hooker's gonna just outclass him. I never saw the appeal in Saucedo other than, he's like Mickey Ward. He's fun to watch.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?
I guess so, yeah.
I just want to reiterate to everyone listening that this is the guy that picked Terry Flanagan to beat Regis Prograis. But we can move on.
I always lean towards the box guy and consistent in that.
That is true. That is very true, Gary. I will give you that.
And then I really wanted to get into this PBC thing. Because when they announced it yesterday, I was content with it. I was like, okay, everyone's back in the ring. Everyone's fighting, especially at 147, which is always the most interesting division. But then I realized something, right? So Pacquiao and Broner is going to be announced next week. So you have all four champs, right? Because Pacquiao has the version of WBA, Thurman has the other, Porter and Spence. So you have all 147-pound champs, plus Danny Garcia, all scheduled to fight in the early part of next year. And none of them are scheduled to fight each other? That's alarming. That's a problem.
I agree.
When Porter beat Danny Garcia, Spence got into the ring and said that this would be the easiest fight they wanted to make. This is the easiest fight they can make. They both wanted to fight, and they just had to get Al on the phone, and they could make this fight easily. Last year, Spence told Bud, if he wants to smoke, pick up Horn 70 belt, otherwise you're useless to me. Well, Crawford did that. So Spence, and I'm a Spence fan, you know this, right? But Spence has basically called out Porter and Bud, but instead opted to fight a lightweight. That's really inexcusable. With all the talent at 47,
it's bullshit.
These fights can be made, and then you fight a lightweight. That's a problem.
It's
then
bullshit.
Pacquiao, it is. Usyk's right. Pacquiao says he came over to PBC to fight the best guys on PBC. I'm actually into the Broner fight, but when was the last time Broner won a fight? It's been almost 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how many guys has Broner ever beaten his whole career at 147?
I want to say no one, because having all of his... Maybe Emmanuel Taylor?
Paulie Malignaggi. No, that's at 40. Only Paulie Malignaggi. He's the only one who's ever won at 47. So how is fighting him fighting the best welterweights PBC has to offer? Why not at least fight Danny Garcia? Danny Garcia needs a date. You know what I'm saying? And then Garcia's fighting Granados. Really, you can't do anything any better than Adrian. I think Granados is okay, but we know that Granados is really 140 pound and not a 147 pound. And then you have Keith Thurman, who said he come back straight away and fight Porter. He's fighting Josecito Lopez. And look, I'm glad Josecito Lopez got a fight because, I like Lopez. And I think Robert Garcia will have him ready. I think he'll have the right game plan. But there's levels to this. And I think Saucedo Lopez will have some moments in that fight against a rusty Keith Thurman. But it's going to look like Rios versus Danny Garcia. Like, there's levels to this. And Saucedo Lopez is at least one, if not two levels below Keith Thurman. So Keith Thurman's going to win that fight. Like, we already know that. What happened to him fighting Porter straight away? Porter said they were in negotiations. Porter said he would fight Spence. Instead, he's taking his mandatory, which I think could be cherry picking gone really wrong for him.
Very quickly, just to add to the conspiracy here, Gary, I love what you're saying here. I'm not going to say I agree with everything because I have to be a little bit PC here, but I love everything you're saying. I'll be completely honest. On top of that, Sean said only, a couple weeks ago that he was in negotiations with Keith Thurman, but in this press conference, when asked about why he couldn't fight Spence, and Spence kind of grilled him on that, his answer was, I had a mandatory to fill out. Dude, your mandatory is also advised by Al Heyman. We really don't believe that you can get an extension or a waiver from that mandatory. We really don't believe that. Honestly, come on. Like, it's just not believable.
And he said, and the WBC said Keith Thurman gets the first crack. That was what they said all the way back when, last year or early this year when he vacated. And just throughout the history of boxing, unifications take precedence. Like, they would give Ugas his shot, but they would give it to him after the unification fight. So he'd get it later in the year, maybe in the summer or the fall. But, like, unification fights always take precedence. And Thurman, Porter hasn't even made any defenses of his belt. Right? So, I mean, they always give you one. You always get one optional defense before they make you take a mandatory. So it's like the WBC never threatened to strip Showtime unless he took this fight. It's just, and I think he could lose this fight. Like, I think this is a tricky fight for him. I'm not picking him to lose. I'm just saying it's a tricky fight for him. And if he loses that, then he loses his big pay-per-view payday with Spencer or a rematch with Thurman or whatever. It's like none of this is really a good look for the sport. Like, the fights on their own aren't that bad, I guess. But it's like no one's fighting each other. It's like not only is no one pushing for greatness, it's like everyone's taking the path of least resistance. Like, everyone's taking the easiest fight that they can possibly get.
And really, the only time that anyone's really, going for greatness is the Mikey versus Earl fight. That's behind a $75 paywall. Quick thoughts on what you're stating here. I really have no issue with Danny versus Adrian Granados. In fact, I like the fight. He lost his last fight. I'm not expecting him to go and fight Thurman, Porter in a rematch, or Spence. Like, that just seemed unrealistic in a lot of ways. Keith Thurman off the injury, like you stated when we talked about him fighting Porter and the likelihood of that, and you sort of heavily questioned it. You were right in a way. Like, there's no way Thurman was probably gonna come back and fight Porter. Was that Porter just talking out his ass? I have no idea. But in all honesty, there is no reason that Spence versus Sean Porter couldn't have been made first quarter 2019 and be a Fox main event. There is no reason that cannot happen. They put Danny versus Keith on CBS. Let's not hear that, it needs to be on pay-per-view or that needs to be marinated. No. Put that motherfucker on Fox right now. Get it going. There's no excuse for that. But beside that, even if, let's say, all these matchups are there, I think if Spence versus Mikey isn't pay-per-view, if that's just a Fox main event, if they take away maybe one or two events, beef up the other cards, we really don't have this conversation. But instead, it's a lot of cards with some fights that are somewhat interesting, some fights that are solid, and some that just don't make sense in a lot of ways. And that sort of non-consensus, non-consistency in the schedule, and also no real A-level fight that's on Fox, it's going to be a little bit anticlimactic. And on top of that, let's be honest, that press conference yesterday was just bad. Chris Myers was awkward as hell. He had no idea what he was saying. He was constantly asking for fighters to smile. It was odd. Keith Thurman was the only person that ever really brought some character and some life to the press conference. But that felt a little bit flat because no one else was really backing that up. Maybe Spence in a way, but not really because he does it in his own Spence way. A la Terrence Crawford. Those two guys are very similar. It's just solid. Like it's a B-level schedule. And I think that is both a criticism and also fine in a way. And take that for what it is. Gary?
Yeah. You're saying you're okay with the Garcia and Granados fight. I think it's an okay fight. Like it's an entertaining fight. It's not completely one-sided. My problem with that fight is that Granados is really a 140-pounder. Like he is. Like he keeps saying, I want to go back down to 140, but then I'll get to my fight again at 147. It's like, well, let's see how he does that at 140 because that's really where he should be.
Well, the problem is that very quickly. The problem is that Al really doesn't have a lot of guys at 140, but he has a lot of guys at 147. That's why.
That's true too. But if you're okay with like Danny fighting Granados, right? Why can Broner fight Pacquiao off a draw, but Garcia can't fight him off a close look? You know what I'm saying? Like, are you okay with Broner fighting Pacquiao?
Yeah,
he didn't win
yeah.
the best fight.
Like, I'll put it this way: like, would I be mad at Pacquiao versus Danny Garcia? Absolutely not. Do I think that's a better fight than Adrian Broner? Absolutely. But I'm still okay with Danny Garcia versus Granados and Pacquiao versus Broner. Those two fights are completely serviceable to me.
What if they switch the opponents? Like, what if you had Pacquiao, Granados, and Danny and?
Oh no, no. The second you said Pacquiao Granados, that just seemed ugly. Like, nah, I'm good, fam.
Okay. And then
I'll admit
versus Broner on the same card.
I'll admit Danny versus.
Garcia versus Broner on the same card. So you have Garcia and Broner, and then you have Pacquiao versus Granados.
See, to me, that's not what we should really be talking about. We should be talking about the fact that, you know what? For example, maybe the Thurman Lopez card or the Santa Cruz Flores card.
Yeah.
Cancel that, scrap that, and put that on the undercard of Garcia Granados. So you have Garcia versus Granados, Santa Cruz versus Flores, Figueroa versus John Molina Jr. That's a serviceable card. Or Garcia versus Granados, Thurman versus Lopez, Wanaki versus Washington. That's a good card. To me, the issue is that we're spreading out the talent too thin. That's what I'm seeing here.
And doesn't Figueroa is a PBC? So what's wrong with Granados versus Figueroa? That's a good fight. Like John Molina.
Well, Figueroa's at 147.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Figueroa's at 147.
Oh, Figueroa's staying at 47. That fight's at 47.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I can check really fast, but I would assume John Molina Jr. is at 147 because last time he was at 140, he missed weight against Crawford.
Okay, he's just at 47. Okay. Because I know Figueroa said he wanted to come back down to 40 even after he beat Robert Guerrero. But if he was at 47, that's going to make 47 real interesting. And the Santa Cruz Flores fight. I like Santa Cruz and I like Flores. Right? Flores is usually the Texas guy. Shout out to him. But that's the main event? I mean, really?
But let's be honest, if that card was on FS1, it's not an issue. But it's on Fox.
Fox, right. I don't know how many people are going to stay home. But why is Santa Cruz? What happened to Santa Cruz versus Gary Russell Jr.? Like, that's the fight everyone wanted. Like, what happened to that fight?
Gary Russell.
That was supposed to be almost done.
Gary Russell fights once a year, and he talks about it, and he says, I'm going to fight once a year. Stop pestering me, people. I'm not fighting 2 or 3 times a year.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, honestly, like, he says it. Like, Gary has said it numerous times that he makes money outside the sport. I think he works in real estate as well. You know, he doesn't need boxing. He does this because he makes a lot of money once per fight that sets up his family. And I agree. I mean, we all want Leo Santa Cruz versus Gary Russell. It's an in-house fight. It's a unification. Why the hell is it not happening? But it might just happen because it's Gary Russell's one fight a year, but it's not going to happen in the first quarter because Gary Russell fought too soon ago, so he's going to wait longer. I don't know.
He fought back in April. That's 8 months ago, 7 months ago. I mean, it's time where your 1 year anniversary. And I love Gary Russell Jr. No, I think Gary Russell Jr. is tremendously skilled. But it's like, he's only going to fight once a year. You know, like, why does he only fight once a year? He only wants to fight once a year.
It's like the musical artist that you're really into that only drops an album like every 4 years, and you hate that, but that album's amazing. That's Gary Russell Jr. in a way. Every time he fights, I love watching Gary Russell Jr. I think he's an extreme talent, and arguably, he might be the best guy in that division. But we just don't see him enough, and I've stopped caring about it, to be honest.
And then the other thing is no Tank Davis. I mean, what's going on with it?
Showtime. Remember, there's an entire Showtime commitment that PBC has. This is only half of PBC's stable in a way. And that, to be honest, there's a question of really what can they fill out on Showtime's schedule when they throw all of their names that they have on pay-per-view or on Fox. But I would assume a Gervonta Davis Abner Mares fight is on Showtime, first quarter next year.
Is that fight official?
No. I checked all the Big Four's schedules: Matchroom, Top Rank, Golden Boy, and PBC. PBC's schedule, in terms of what their Showtime schedule, only includes the Stevenson, Vajdic, and obviously the Wilder Fury pay-per-view card. That's December 1st. They have not scheduled any more Showtime cards yet. So that's where I would assume some of the names we don't see here, they're probably going towards Showtime.
And who was calling? Was anyone calling for the Santa Cruz Flores fight? I mean,
no.
That was like a surprise to me because that seemed like
I think it's a stay busy fight. I think it's a stay busy fight waiting for the Josh Warrington Carl Frampton winner. And
I mean, let's be real. If anybody called for the Santa Cruz Flores fight, they should be following boxing. I'm sorry.
No, they should be taken out and beaten up. Seriously.
I'll give him a few helplines. There's a few out there. I know that.
Gary.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. What was that?
He was making a joke, but if you want to continue your call.
Sorry, man.
Oh. No. It's you're breaking up on me a little bit. No, that's really all I got. Talk about Santa Cruz and Flores. Yeah, I mean, none of the fights are like terrible fights except for Santa Cruz and Flores. And I'll be rooting for Flores. He's our Texas guy. But, like, he's not going to win. I mean, and the rest of the fights are like, they really do. Garcia and Granados does nothing for me. Like, if Garcia wins, so what? And if Granados wins, so what? Right? I mean, it's not a title fight. They've lost Garcia's lost to every top welterweight he's fought, and so has Granados. So what is beating each other? What does that do for either one of them? If Granados beat Garcia, right? Let's say Granados supposed to be upset. Would you pick Granados to beat Porter in a rematch? Or would you pick him to beat Thurman or Spence?
No.
That's what I'm saying. He doesn't do anything. And if Garcia wins, let's say Garcia beats him, would you pick Garcia to beat Thurman or Spence?
No, but that's always been that way.
Right, so I mean, this fight, it's a fine fight. I think it'll be fairly competitive. I'm going to pick Garcia. But it does nothing for either fighter.
I agree. Anything else?
That's all I got, Matt.
Thank you, Gary. Always appreciate your calls. Cam, we're about to move on to MMA and UFC topics. Any sort of wrapping up boxing, opinions or news out there? I would assume Cam is busy right now. We're going to move on to the UFC Fight Night 140 card, Magny versus Ponzinibbio. And quickly, actually, before I do that, apparently I said Stevenson versus Jack. I meant Stevenson versus Vajdic. I apologize. Sometimes that happens. UFC Fight Night 140, Neil Magny versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. A card that honestly isn't that great, to be quite honest. But I like the main event, Magny versus Ponzinibbio. A huge step up, in my opinion, for Santiago. Magny is just a much more established top 10 perennial guy in the division. And Ponzinibbio's really only notable win, in my opinion, is the Mike Perry W. And that, as time goes on, means less and less, in my opinion. I think Ponzinibbio, if he can get close, unleash sort of his short, compact hooks, he could probably get Magny out of there. If Magny can be at distance or change this up to a grappling affair, get him against the cage, take him down, be on top, I think Magny could pull out a decision here, especially since his cardio obviously is vastly superior than Ponzinibbio. I'm going to hesitantly pick Ponzinibbio by KO early, but I feel like the smart pick is a Magny. I feel like he's just the more established guy, more known guy, and plus the more like well-rounded fighter as well. His grappling skills are nothing to really laugh at. Co-main event: Darren Elkins versus Ricardo Lamas. Really a crossroads fight for both guys. The winner of this fight probably on his way towards that top 5 in the division, and the loser probably closer towards retirement probably. I'm picking Lamas hesitantly. I think he has the wrestling chops to sort of negate all of Elkins' grappling acumen. And on top of that, he is obviously the better striker technically. However, Lamas has, I'm not going to say zero chin, but he's been touched. He's been viciously knocked out recently as well. And Elkins could pull off that upset in a very Darren Elkins style.
I've got Magny and Lamas in those 2 fights. I think Magny. I mean, like you said, I think Magny's the smart bet. I think Magny will win a decision. I think Lamas will win a decision. That's the 2 picks I'm going for.
I definitely will not argue against that. Magny is the safe bet. I'm just seeing that Magny at times really struggles with controlling his range. For a guy that's so tall, so lanky for the division, guys can get on the inside with him relatively easily, I would say. And Ponzinibbio, I can see him slipping off that center line past a jab, unleashing a nice left hook, something, and really catching Magny and hurting him. And I think that's what we're going to see. But again, like you said, and I said, Magny is the better fighter overall. Lamas is the better fighter overall. Killer Roundtree on the card as well against Johnny Walker. The only fight I'm going to talk about, or the last fight I'm going to talk about on the card. There's obviously another 9 fights to watch. Cynthia Cavallo on the card, but nothing that really catches my eye. But Killer Roundtree, God, that guy has come from nowhere, it seems, from the Ultimate Fighter. His mixture of timing, explosiveness, athleticism, knockout power is a devastating combination. What he did to Gokhan Saki was just brutal. Roundtree should probably get Johnny Walker out of here in devastating fashion and early, and be on his way towards climbing up the ranks at 205 and start establishing himself as a contender in that barren division. Cam, any thoughts on that fight or any of the other fights on the card before we move on?
No, man, I'm not too sure. I've not really looked at the card. I mean, the 2 fights, the main and co-main, they're the only really ones that I'm familiar with in terms of the people on the card. Like, I follow MMA, but not as extensively as you. But no, man, I'm not even sure about the other card. I'm not too sure. Who else was on the actual card? I mean, I know it's not like the biggest name card.
Well, the Killer Roundtree fight against Johnny Walker, definitely watch that one. Killer Roundtree is a good prospect at the 205-pound division. Marlon Vera's on the card.
I know Marlon Vera, yeah.
Cynthia Cavallo's on the card. She was on the Ultimate Fighter, I think. She has a little bit of a following because she's pretty cute. And other than that, nothing really that I know of. Like Humberto Bendini and Austin Arnett. I've never heard of those men in my life. So this is gonna be one of those cards that a vast majority of it is just background. Like, I'll put it on the TV, not really be paying attention to it. If I see somebody get knocked out, I might rewind it and see what happened. But like you said, those top 2 fights, maybe seeing Killer Roundtree again, that's all that I care about for this fight night. Definitely not a stacked card. And sort of switching back to what we're talking about with boxing, these type of cards are what we're going to get in boxing if something is not changed, and that is of concern. Moving on from that, though, Cowboy Cerrone, obviously getting the huge win against Mike Perry via submission. I think not really saving his career. That's putting it probably too harshly, but in a way he did. Basically setting up and the narrative that he's waiting for Conor McGregor for a potential fight. I'll be honest, I'm intrigued. If anyone remembers way back, probably 2 or 3 years ago now, probably closer to 3 or 4 years ago now, in the big press conference they had, I think it was called like The Time Is Now or It's Time or whatever. They had all the fighters of all the main events and all the cards up there on a big stage. And Cowboy Cerrone and Conor McGregor got into a little exchange. And they can play that in promos constantly. These two guys will mesh well completely. The fight will be great. I'm doubtful it happens, though.
I just remember this press comments when Cowboy is like, if he comes out to 155, we're going to bend his little ass over and slap the shit out.
Yo, he was like...
Well, that's all I remember with Cowboy.
Yo, because if you remember, that was McGregor versus Aldo at the time, right? And
yeah.
And Cerrone was like, can you sit down and shut the fuck up? You have a killer right across from you in a division below me. Please stop. And it was hilarious, man.
I just remember McGregor when Cerrone was talking to him. McGregor was like, I see stiffness in that 155.
I see stiffness, yes. That was great. I'll be honest, I just don't think this happens. I could be wrong. I see Conor McGregor. I don't know what Conor McGregor does. That's the weirdest thing. Because
I want to see him fight Ferguson. That's what I want to see.
That'd be great. But I think Ferguson gets Khabib next.
So are these rumors of Khabib fighting GSP not true?
I wouldn't say they're not true. I have not seen enough of them from enough people that I really respect to say it's a legit rumor that there's...
Until Ariel Helwani tweets out, I'm not really interested.
No, but I mean, there's certain people, maybe like a Jed Goodman, coming out talking about it. Brett Okamoto coming out talking about it. There's certain people that, a Mark Ramundi, of MMA fighting, a John Morgan, some of those guys are just a little more clout in the industry. I'll wait till then. I'm leaning towards Khabib Tony's happening. Why not? Just make that fucking fight. And plus,
I hope it happens. That's the fight I want.
Plus, with Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier no longer happening, I mean, does Conor just take that fight again because it's easy money? And plus, it's a winnable fight for him. It's less danger than maybe a Cowboy Cerrone fight because Cowboy's his wrestling is far better than Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, let's be completely honest.
Do you reckon? Do you not think McGregor will? Do you not think McGregor will wait for the Khabib rematch? Do you think he'll fight somebody else before?
I don't think he goes from losing to Khabib to fighting Khabib next. Not because he wouldn't want to. I think the UFC won't allow it. I think the UFC would be way too concerned about losing that cash cow of McGregor potentially to Khabib twice. They
would. I mean, they would, right? I mean, I don't see any very different outcome no matter how many times they fight.
I think. Plus, I mean, they must have learned from like the Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw situation. They must have learned from some of these situations that, hey, immediate rematches, not always the best idea. Now, I'm probably giving the UFC way too much credit there in terms of intelligence and how they operate their company. But I'm hoping that's the thought process here, that they decide, hey, let's put McGregor versus Justin Gaethje. Somebody that's a complete heavy bag out there.
Oh, he's fighting Pettis, I heard.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
But I assume McGregor's going to take a long break and then come back and fight somebody that is beatable. And Cowboy Cerrone, while beatable, is still a highly dangerous fight, I think, for Conor McGregor stylistically.
Didn't Cerrone say that the UFC have got someone in mind for him and it's a good opponent for 55?
Yes, he did say that.
I reckon it might be Poirier. That's what I reckon it could be.
I like that. Especially since, Nate Diaz is out there not fighting Dustin Poirier, who would be sort of the best guy to fill that role. That's fucking Donald Cerrone. That's really all I have to say about this topic. I'm doubtful we see McGregor versus Cerrone headline pay-per-view soon. I'm not saying it doesn't happen down the line, but I don't think it happens soon. Any last thoughts on this topic, Cam?
Yeah, I think if Cerrone beat a Poirier or someone like that, I think then you can say, all right, McGregor Cerrone, because I think Cerrone, I mean, he beat Yancy Medeiros and he beat Mike Perry's last 2 wins. That's not enough to warrant a McGregor pay-per-view headline, in my opinion. He has to get another real big win, and then we can kind of talk about that.
Interesting. I agree. I definitely agree with that. His sort of stance and leverage would be far greater if he has sort of a Dustin Poirier win.
Also, another thing, it's a shame that Mike Perry's not, overall a really good overall as a fighter. Because I think Mike Perry could be a star if he actually had the whole package. Because I actually like Mike Perry, man. I think he's a funny guy, but I don't know. I think he's lost 3 times now, right?
Yeah.
He lost to Alan Jaban, Cerrone, and who was the other one he lost to?
Ponzinibbio.
That's it. Yeah, he's lost 3 times now. I mean, where does he go next? Who's he fighting next? I mean, do they build him back up again? And he's a fun guy, man, but he's just not the guy.
Mike Perry, I'm trying to think of a good analog to him in MMA. Maybe like a Melvin Gillard. Obviously, Mike Perry, way more personality, but I mean, close to that in terms of just craziness.
What about Condit? What's Condit doing now?
No, not even close to Condit. Non-personality, not even close. Carlos Condit, I believe.
No, I mean, like in terms of that fight, I mean, he's fighting. Isn't Condit fighting Alex Oliveira?
Ooh, is he fighting Oliveira? I know he's fighting. He has a fight. I just forget who he's fighting. It's probably.
I think it's Alex Oliveira. I think it is.
You're probably right. I think Mike Perry loses to anyone in the top 15. To be honest.
Yeah. Even Condit at this point.
His best win is against Paul Felder, who came in on short notice and moved up a weight class for the fight. I just don't see it being likely. We see Mike Perry turn into a top contender champion, and on top of that, a star. I think he's going to be one of those guys that hardcore fans like him, they hate him. He's polarizing in a way, but he's going to be stuck in that bubble due to his talent. Moving on, though, UFC getting a significantly larger cut of pay-per-view revenue starting in 2019, going from 50% of the cut. So basically, for those that don't understand, your $70 you spend on a UFC pay-per-view, half of that money goes towards the distributors that the UFC goes through for the pay-per-views, a la like DirecTV, Dish, etc. Now they're getting 70% of the cut, which obviously will equal millions and millions and millions of more dollars for the UFC that the UFC fighters are not really seeing a cut of. And on top of that, any of the UFC pay-per-views sold through them directly, they get 100% of that revenue. Just interesting to look at in combination with them getting $120+ million per year. More than that. From ESPN, I think it's somewhere around $200 million per year. A lot of money is going in the UFC pockets right now, while they are cutting an entire division, while they're sending TJ Dillashaw in to fucking destroy the division, whatever his words were. It's just a weird sort of time for WME and the UFC. They're all of a sudden now gaining a lot of money and just some weird business tactics. I don't really have a clear, concise viewpoint on this news other than it's the UFC doing UFC shit. And, go contact Project Spearhead, please, if you're a UFC fighter. If you haven't yet, you're just being ignorant. Cam, any thoughts on the UFC now getting millions or more dollars without telling us?
Not any thoughts on that, no, not really.
Yeah,
no.
It's pretty cut and dry. Moving on, Nevada passing the new unified rules of MMA, but not the same grounded fighter definition. That is now sort of to tally it 3 different rule sets used in the U.S. for MMA, depending on what state you're at. Shout out to just combat sports. I assume, Cam, you probably don't have an opinion about that.
No, I don't have an opinion about that either. Sadly.
Last topic of the day, and again, one of those sort of just news topics, or just headlines. Sean O'Malley, a guy that's been really gaining a lot of steam in the UFC just from his overall social media presence, His suspension for a tainted supplement has been announced at 6 months per the Nevada State Athletic Commission. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the show today. Cam, anything out there that people should know about? Any articles, interviews, anything coming out?
Yeah, man, I've got some stuff coming out. Obviously, I just posted an interview with Daniel Dubois a few days ago. Follow my Twitter, CameronGillen_, and anything that does come my way in terms of interviews and stuff, you'll just catch it all there.
Well, thank you, Cameron, for joining. Always appreciate when you come on. Interesting times for combat sports fans. Obviously, boxing is in a massive overhaul and change. We've seen change. It's been a turbulent time for boxing fans, I feel like. The last 3 years, in terms of consistency in the product, in the marketplace, has been all over the place. MMA is always doing MMA-like things. And obviously, we have tons of fights coming this weekend that most of them are just not good. I hope you guys enjoy the show. Smash the like button, share the show, subscribe. If you listen on podcasts, drop that iTunes review. I read all the reviews, regardless of the 1 star to 5 stars. I read them all on the show. I am Matt, the Hipster Hunter. Hipsters here. Haters beware. And I hope everyone, like I said, had a fantastic day. Peace.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
Who the fuck is that guy?
That's fucking illegal.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?